the Kithaeron homeworld of Veltar had seen better days. What once stood as a proud civilization spanning 3 continents now huddled behind massive energy shields, watching their cities burn under relentless bombardment from the hegemony war fleets. Admiral Zexhai stood in the command center of their last remaining orbital station, his forearms trembling as he watched another evacuation transport explode in a brilliant flash of orange fire. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Southern Hemisphere defense grid," reported Communications Officer Thylan, her voice cracking through the translator. "The hegemony advance forces have broken through our final defensive line." Zexhai's mandibles clicked in frustration. 3 months ago, the hegemony had arrived without warning, demanding immediate surrender of all Kithaeron colonies and half their population as tribute slaves. When the Kithaeron Council had refused, the massive alien armada had begun systematically destroying everything they held dear. The hegemony was ancient and powerful, with technology that made Kithaeron weapons look like primitive tools. Their ships could phase through solid matter, their weapons could crack planets, and their soldiers were enhanced cybernetic beings that felt no pain or fear. Dozens of civilizations had already fallen before them, and the Kithaerons were simply the latest in a long line of victims. "Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from the High Council," announced Lieutenant Mordak from his station near the holographic display table. "Put them through," Zexhai ordered, straightening his ceremonial armor despite the hopelessness of their situation. The flickering image of High Counselor Vexani appeared in the center of the room, her usually pristine robes torn and stained with debris. Behind her, other council members huddled around damaged equipment in what appeared to be an underground bunker. "Admiral Zexhai, we have perhaps 6 hours before the hegemony breaks through our planetary shields," she said without preamble. "Our military advisors estimate we have lost 80% of our defensive capabilities. We need to consider our options." "High Counselor, with respect, what options remain?" "Our fleets are destroyed, our colonies are occupied, and our people are dying," Zexhai replied, his voice heavy with the weight of impending defeat. "There is one possibility," Vexani said slowly. "Our xenoarchaeologists have been studying the old Galactic Archive, looking for any civilization that might have the power to stand against the hegemony. They found references to something called the Terran Federation." Zexhai's secondary arms gestured in confusion. "I've never heard of this Terran Federation. Are they powerful enough to challenge the hegemony?" "According to the archives, they defeated something called the Xerian Empire approximately 50 standard years ago. The records are fragmentary, but they suggest the Terrans possess advanced military capabilities and have a history of assisting smaller civilizations against aggressive expansionist powers." Communications Officer Thylan looked up from her console with surprise. "High Counselor, I'm detecting some very old signal protocols in our emergency broadcast systems. They appear to match frequencies mentioned in the archive data about this Terran Federation. Can we reach them?" Vexani asked urgently. "The signal would have to travel through 17 different star systems to reach the coordinates listed in the archive. It would take approximately 4 hours for a transmission to reach them, assuming the coordinates are still valid," Thylan explained while rapidly typing commands into her workstation. "We don't have much choice," Zexhai said grimly. "If there's even a small chance they might help, we have to try. Prepare the emergency broadcast." "Admiral, what should we tell them?" asked Lieutenant Mordak. Zexhai considered this carefully. The archive suggested that Terrans responded well to direct requests for assistance, but he didn't want to overstate their case or seem desperate, even though they absolutely were. "Tell them that the Kithaeron people are under attack by an aggressive force called the hegemony. Request immediate military assistance. Include our coordinates, our current military status, and emphasize that we are facing extinction if help doesn't arrive within the next 6 hours." Thylan nodded and began composing the message. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic interface as she translated their desperate plea into what she hoped was the correct protocol format for Terran communications. "Message composed and ready for transmission, Admiral," she announced after several minutes of intense work. "Send it," Zexhai ordered. "And pray to whatever deities might be listening that someone receives it." The transmission burst out from their orbital station at the speed of light, carrying their desperate plea across the vast emptiness of space toward coordinates that might not even exist anymore. Meanwhile, the battle for Veltar continued to rage below them. Hegemony fighters swarmed like angry insects around the remaining Kithaeron defense platforms, their phase weapons cutting through shields and armor as if they were made of paper. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface as orbital bombardment continued, each flash representing thousands of Kithaeron lives lost.
Admiral, we're receiving reports from the ground, Mordak announced.
The capital city's shields are at 15%.
They estimate 30 minutes before complete failure.
Zexhai watched the tactical display with growing horror.
Red indicators showing hegemony positions were spreading across the map like a plague. Their own forces, represented by rapidly diminishing blue dots, were being systematically eliminated.
Any word from the evacuation transports? He asked. Transport 7 managed to reach the outer system before being destroyed, reported Thylan. Transports 3 and 9 are still running silent in the asteroid belt, but the hegemony has deployed hunter-killer drones throughout the system.
It's only a matter of time.
The Admiral species didn't cry the way humans did, but his equivalent emotional response was causing his breathing appendages to flutter rapidly. Everything they had built over thousands of years of civilization was being destroyed in a matter of hours by an enemy they couldn't even scratch. Sir, incoming transmission from Hegemony Command, announced the communications officer.
Let's hear what they have to say, Zexhai said bitterly. The holographic display shifted to show the terrifying visage of a Hegemony War Prime, its cybernetic enhancements glowing red against dark metallic skin.
When it spoke, its voice was processed through multiple mechanical filters, creating an effect that was both beautiful and utterly inhuman. Kitharin Military Command, this is War Prime Nexus 7.
Your resistance has been noted and found inadequate.
You will lower your shields and surrender unconditionally within the next standard hour, or we will demonstrate our planet-cracking capabilities.
This offer will not be repeated.
The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence.
Planet-cracking capabilities, whispered Lieutenant Mordak.
They're not bluffing, Vexeni's voice crackled through the still-open channel to the High Council.
Our deep space sensors have detected a massive ship jumping into the outer system. It's easily 10 times the size of anything we've ever seen.
If they have the power to destroy entire planets, then we're not just talking about conquest anymore, Zexhai finished.
They mean to make an example of us.
The next few hours passed in a blur of desperate defensive actions and increasingly hopeless tactical reports. The planetary shields continued to weaken under constant bombardment. Evacuation efforts had largely ceased after the hegemony began specifically targeting civilian transports. The Kitharin military, what little remained of it, had been reduced to small guerrilla units operating from hidden bunkers. As their situation became increasingly dire, Zexhai found himself thinking about the transmission they had sent into the void.
Had it even reached its destination? Did the Terran Federation still exist? And, even if they did, what could one civilization do against the massive military machine that was the hegemony?
Admiral, Thylan called out suddenly, her voice filled with excitement. I'm detecting an incoming transmission on the emergency frequency we used to contact the Terran Federation.
Put it through immediately, Zexhai ordered, hardly daring to hope.
The communication that came through was unlike anything they had ever received. Instead of the usual holographic display, they heard only an audio transmission in what sounded like a dozen different voices speaking simultaneously in a language that their universal translators struggled to process. Kitharin vessels, this is Terran Federation Emergency Response Coordination.
We have received your distress call and are currently analyzing your situation.
Please maintain your current position and continue defensive operations.
Additional instructions will follow shortly.
The transmission ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving the Kitharin command staff staring at each other in amazement. They received our message, Mordak whispered.
But, what can they possibly do from so far away? Thylan asked. Before anyone could answer, their long-range sensors began detecting something extraordinary.
At the very edge of their sensor range, space itself seemed to be shifting.
Reality was bending in ways that their instruments couldn't properly measure or explain.
Admiral, you need to see this, called out sensor operator Kielvex from his station. Our deep space arrays are detecting massive gravitational anomalies at coordinates 77 Mark 49.
The readings don't match anything in our database. Can you get a visual? Zexhai asked, moving to stand behind the sensor station.
Attempting to boost signal strength, Kielvex replied, his hands dancing across multiple control surfaces. This is strange. The anomalies appear to be moving in formation, but they're still too far away to get accurate readings.
How far away? The Admiral asked.
At their current speed, approximately 47 minutes from our position.
Zexhai's mandibles clicked in thought.
Whatever was approaching them was moving incredibly fast to cross such vast distances in less than an hour.
Either the hegemony had called in reinforcements, or Admiral Violin suddenly called out. Incoming priority transmission from the approaching contacts. Are you certain it's from them? Zexai asked. Positive, sir. The signal is originating directly from the gravitational anomalies. Put it through.
This time, the communication came through with perfect clarity. A human voice, speaking in accented but understandable galactic standard, filled the command center. Kitharin Command, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy.
We are en route to your position with a full response fleet.
Please transmit detailed tactical information about enemy positions, capabilities, and civilian evacuation status.
We'll be arriving in 43 minutes.
The silence in the command center was deafening.
Finally, Zexai found his voice. Admiral Chen, this is Admiral Zexai of the Kitharin Defense Force.
We weren't expecting such a rapid response. The hegemony has superior numbers and technology. They've destroyed most of our fleet and are threatening to crack our planet if we don't surrender. There was a pause before Admiral Chen responded, and, when she did, her voice carried an edge that made even the battle-hardened Kitharin officers shiver.
Admiral Zexai, the Terran Federation has a strict policy regarding threats against civilian populations. We're about to make that policy very clear to the hegemony.
Please begin civilian evacuation procedures immediately and clear all friendly forces from engagement zones.
We'll handle the rest.
As if summoned by her words, the sensors suddenly screened with new contacts. Hundreds of them, appearing out of nowhere in perfect formation, moving with impossible precision toward the hegemony fleet. Warprime Nexus 7 had been conquering civilizations for over 3 centuries. In all that time, he had never encountered a species foolish enough to challenge the hegemony's absolute superiority. Yet here he stood in his command ship's war room, staring at sensor readings that defied all logical explanation. Report, he commanded, his cybernetic voice processors adding harmonic undertones that made lesser species tremble with instinctive fear. Warprime, we are detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the system, reported his chief science officer, Subprime Corax 9. The readings suggest the arrival of a fleet, but the energy signatures don't match any known technology in our databases.
How many ships?
Nexus 7 asked, his mechanical fingers drumming against the tactical display table.
That's difficult to determine, Warprime.
The distortions are interfering with our sensors, but preliminary scans suggest at least 400 vessels of varying sizes.
Nexus 7's optical implants flashed red.
400 ships was a significant force, even by hegemony standards.
His own battle group consisted of 67 vessels, including the planet-killer dreadnought Absolute Dominion. Still, numbers alone had never been sufficient to challenge hegemony technology. What civilization commands this fleet? He demanded. Unknown, Warprime.
We're attempting to identify their origin, but their ships use technology we've never encountered before. They appear to be using some form of advanced spacetime manipulation for both propulsion and tactical deployment.
Show me, Nexus 7 ordered.
The holographic display in the center of the war room shifted to show the outer system, where space itself seemed to be rippling with energy. As they watched, sleek vessels materialized out of what appeared to be folds in reality itself. The ships were elegant and deadly looking, with smooth hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it.
Fascinating, murmured Subprime Corax 9.
Their ships appear to be constructed from materials that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Our weapons may have difficulty achieving target locks. Any civilization capable of such technology would have been catalogued in our databases, Nexus 7 stated with absolute certainty. Cross-reference with all known spacefaring species. Several minutes passed as the ship's vast computer systems searched through thousands of years of accumulated data about galactic civilizations. Finally, Corax 9 looked up with an expression of confusion.
Warprime, we found a partial match.
According to our historical records, approximately 50 standard years ago, the Xerian Empire reported contact with a species calling themselves humans or Terrans. However, those records indicate the species had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and possessed primitive fusion-based weapons.
What happened to the Xerian Empire? Nexus 7 asked, though he already suspected the answer. They disappeared, Warprime. Their entire territory went dark approximately 48 years ago.
We assumed they had fallen to internal rebellion or natural disaster. Nexus 7 studied the tactical display more carefully. The approaching fleet was maintaining perfect formation while moving at speeds that should have torn apart any conventional starship. Whatever these humans had become in 50 years, they were no longer the primitive species the Xerions had encountered.
"Open a communication channel," he commanded. "Channel open, War Prime." "Unknown fleet, this is War Prime Nexus 7 of the Hegemony 3rd Conquest Fleet. You are interfering with a legitimate military operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences."
The response came almost instantly, broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously in flawless Hegemony standard.
"War Prime Nexus 7, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation Navy.
You are hereby ordered to cease all hostile actions against the Kitharan people and withdraw your forces from this system immediately.
This is your only warning." Nexus 7's optical implants flashed brighter.
The audacity of these humans was almost amusing.
Did they truly believe they could threaten the hegemony? "Human Admiral, you clearly don't understand the situation. The hegemony has never retreated from a battlefield, and we will not start now.
Your primitive technology cannot match our superior firepower." There was a pause before Admiral Chen responded, and, when she did, her voice carried an edge of cold steel. "War Prime, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. After that, we will consider you a hostile force threatening civilian populations, and we will respond accordingly."
"You dare threaten the hegemony?" Nexus 7 roared.
"Subprime Corax, prepare all weapons.
We'll show these humans what happens when inferior species challenge their betters."
"War Prime, weapons charging, but I'm detecting some unusual readings from the human fleet," Corax 9 reported nervously.
"What kind of readings?"
"They appear to be powering down, sir. Energy signatures are dropping across their entire fleet."
Nexus 7 laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "They're retreating already. Cowards, like every other species we've encountered. Actually, War Prime, I don't think they're retreating. I think they're preparing for something else entirely." On the tactical display, the human ships had arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional formation that surrounded the entire hegemony fleet.
Instead of the aggressive attack patterns that most species employed, they seemed to be creating some kind of geometric matrix in space.
"What are they doing?" Nexus 7 demanded. "Unknown, War Prime."
"Their ships are emitting synchronized energy pulses, but I can't determine their purpose."
Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the communication system one final time.
"War Prime, your 30 seconds have expired. I'm truly sorry it's come to this." What happened next would be recorded in hegemony databases as the first military defeat in their species' recorded history. Every human ship in the massive fleet simultaneously activated what their tactical computers would later classify as reality manipulation weapons. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Instead of conventional energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, the human ships projected fields that temporarily altered the fundamental laws of physics within specific areas of space. Hegemony shields, designed to deflect energy and physical matter, suddenly found themselves trying to defend against attacks that ignored conventional physics entirely.
"War Prime!" Corax 9 screamed as alarms began blaring throughout the command ship.
"Our shields are failing. The humans are somehow making our defensive systems forget how to function."
"That's impossible!"
Nexus 7 shouted, but even as he spoke, he could see the tactical display showing his fleet's shields winking out one by one. The human attacks weren't just sophisticated, they were elegant. Rather than destroying hegemony ships outright, they seemed to be selectively disabling specific systems. Weapons arrays suddenly lost cohesion at the molecular level.
Engine cores forgot how to contain fusion reactions.
Life support systems experienced localized gravitational reversals that left crew members floating helplessly in zero gravity.
"How are they doing this?"
Nexus 7 demanded, his voice betraying the first hints of panic he had felt in over 2 centuries.
"I don't know, War Prime."
"Their weapons appear to be rewriting the laws of physics on a localized scale. Our technology isn't designed to counter attacks that change reality itself." The largest human ship, easily 3 times the size of the hegemony dreadnought, moved gracefully through the chaos of disabled vessels toward Nexus 7's command ship. As it approached, it broadcast a new message.
"War Prime, this is Admiral Chen.
As you can see, your fleet is no longer combat effective. You have two choices: surrender and face trial for war crimes, or continue fighting and face complete destruction. Choose quickly. Nexus 7 stared at the tactical display in shock. In less than 5 minutes, the most powerful conquest fleet in hegemony history had been reduced to floating debris and disabled hulks. His own ship was the only vessel that remained fully operational, and only because the humans seemed to be allowing it. "Sir," Corax 9 whispered, "I'm detecting energy signatures that suggest the humans are preparing to target our ship directly." These readings. Warprime, I don't think our hull can withstand whatever they're about to do. For the first time in his existence, Warprime Nexus 7 faced a choice between death and defeat. The concept was so foreign to his species that his cybernetic systems actually struggled to process it. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Complete withdrawal from Kitharin space, immediate cessation of hostilities against all civilian targets, and release of any prisoners you've taken from previous conquests," Admiral Chen replied without hesitation. "You have 1 hour to begin compliance." "And if we refuse?" There was a moment of silence before Admiral Chen's response came through, and her tone had shifted to something that made even Nexus 7's cybernetic spine shiver. "Warprime, the Terran Federation has been fighting wars for over 5,000 years of our history. We've learned that sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to make war so terrible that nobody wants to repeat it. If you force us to demonstrate our full capabilities, I guarantee that the hegemony will remember this day for the rest of your species' existence." As if to emphasize her point, every human ship in the fleet simultaneously powered up their reality manipulation weapons to maximum capacity. The effect was visible even on visual scanners as space itself began to ripple and distort around the disabled hegemony vessels. Nexus 7 realized with absolute certainty that these humans weren't bluffing. Whatever technology they possessed, it was so far beyond hegemony understanding that resistance would be not just futile, but catastrophically destructive. We comply," he said, the words feeling strange and bitter in his mechanical throat. "Excellent," Admiral Chen replied. "Please signal all your vessels to begin immediate withdrawal procedures. Our ships will escort you to the edge of the system to ensure compliance." As the hegemony fleet began its humiliating retreat, Nexus 7 couldn't help but wonder what kind of civilization could develop such devastating capabilities in just 50 years. Whatever these humans had become, they had evolved far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Meanwhile, on the Kitharin orbital station, Admiral Zexhai and his crew watched in stunned amazement as their seemingly hopeless situation transformed into complete victory in a matter of minutes. "Admiral," Communications Officer Thylen whispered, "I'm receiving a transmission from Admiral Chen." "Put her through," Zexhai replied, his voice filled with awe. "Admiral Zexhai, this is Admiral Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We'll maintain a patrol presence in your system until you can rebuild your defensive capabilities. Our medical and engineering teams are standing by to assist with planetary recovery operations." "Admiral Chen, we don't know how to thank you," Zexhai managed to say. "Your arrival saved our entire civilization." "That's what neighbors do for each other," Chen replied simply. "The Terran Federation believes that every sapient species has the right to exist free from oppression. We're just glad we could help." As the human fleet settled into protective positions throughout the Veltar system, the Kitharans began to realize that they had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history: the arrival of a civilization that possessed not just overwhelming military power, but the wisdom and restraint to use it only in defense of others. 3 weeks after the hegemony's defeat, the Kitharan homeworld of Veltar was beginning to heal. Human engineering teams worked alongside Kitharan specialists to rebuild damaged cities, their advanced construction technology making repairs that should have taken years possible in mere days. Admiral Zexhai found himself standing in the rebuilt command center, watching human and Kitharan ships patrol the system together in perfect coordination. "Admiral," Communications Officer Thylen announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Coordination Council." Zexhai's mandibles clicked with concern. The Galactic Coordination Council was the closest thing the galaxy had to a unified government, though their authority was limited to mediating disputes between civilizations and maintaining basic trade protocols. If they were calling, it meant word of the hegemony's defeat had spread throughout known space. "Put them through," he ordered. The holographic display materialized to show High Coordinator Vashtek, a tall, crystalline being whose species had served as galactic diplomats for over 1,000 years. Behind him, Zexhai could see representatives from dozens of different civilizations, all watching the transmission with obvious interest. Admiral Zexai, Vashtek began, his translated voice carrying harmonic overtones that indicated extreme urgency.
The Council has been receiving reports about recent events in your system.
We need to verify these claims, as they have significant implications for galactic stability.
What specific claims, High Coordinator? Zexai asked, though he suspected what was coming.
Reports indicate that an unknown military force completely defeated a hegemony conquest fleet without sustaining a single casualty. Furthermore, witnesses claim this force belongs to a previously unknown civilization calling itself the Terran Federation.
Can you confirm these reports?
Zexai glanced toward the viewport where he could see the elegant form of the human flagship Harmony maintaining a patrol pattern near their orbital station. Admiral Chen had been nothing but courteous and professional during the past 3 weeks, working tirelessly to help rebuild Kitharan infrastructure while her fleet maintained a protective presence throughout the system.
The reports are accurate, High Coordinator, Zexai confirmed.
The Terran Federation responded to our distress call and successfully repelled the hegemony attack. The reaction from the Council chamber was immediate and chaotic. Representatives from multiple species began talking simultaneously, their voices creating a cacophony that overwhelmed the translation systems. Finally, Vashtek called for order. "Admiral, you must understand the implications of what you're telling us.
The hegemony has never been defeated in open combat.
Their technology is considered the most advanced in known space. If this Terran Federation possesses superior capabilities..."
High Coordinator, a new voice interrupted.
Admiral Chen had entered the Kitharan command center without fanfare, her simple blue uniform a stark contrast to the ornate ceremonial armor worn by most galactic military leaders. "I hope you don't mind my joining this conversation." The effect of her appearance on the Council chamber was electric. Representatives from species across the galaxy leaned forward to get a better look at humanity's first official diplomatic contact with the broader galactic community.
"Admiral Chen," Vashtek said carefully, "the Galactic Coordination Council would like to formally welcome the Terran Federation to galactic society. We have many questions about your civilization and its intentions."
"I'm happy to answer what I can," Chen replied with a diplomatic smile.
"Though I should mention that I'm primarily a military officer. My government is currently preparing a formal diplomatic mission to establish proper relations with the Council."
"Admiral, if I may ask directly," said a voice from the back of the Council chamber, belonging to Representative Quill of the Mercantile Alliance.
"How did your forces achieve such a decisive victory against the hegemony?"
"Their technology has been considered unmatched for centuries."
Chen's expression grew thoughtful.
"Representative Quill, the Terran Federation has been fighting wars for a very long time.
We've learned that superior technology alone doesn't determine the outcome of conflicts.
Strategy, adaptability, and understanding your enemy's weaknesses are often more important than raw firepower."
"But the reports suggest your weapons operate on principles we don't understand," pressed another representative. "Some witnesses claim you were altering physical laws during combat."
"Our technology is specialized," Chen admitted. "The Federation has invested heavily in defensive applications of theoretical physics. We prefer to disable rather than destroy when possible."
Admiral Zexai noticed that Admiral Chen was being diplomatically evasive about the true extent of human capabilities. During the battle, he had witnessed technology that seemed to transcend conventional understanding of physics entirely. The humans had treated the hegemony's supposedly invincible fleet like children playing with toys. "Admiral Chen," Vashtek interjected, "the Council must address a matter of significant concern."
"The hegemony has issued a formal protest, claiming that the Terran Federation violated several galactic warfare conventions during your engagement."
Chen's diplomatic smile became considerably less warm. "What specific violations are they claiming?"
"They assert that your weapons constitute a form of illegal reality manipulation that gives you an unfair advantage in combat. They're demanding that the Council censure the Terran Federation and require you to limit your technology to conventional standards." The silence that followed was profound. Admiral Zexai could see Chen processing this information, and he noticed that her relaxed posture had shifted into something much more predatory. "High Coordinator," she said finally, "let me make sure I understand this correctly.
The hegemony conquers civilizations, enslaves populations, and threatens to crack planets full of innocent civilians. But, when someone stops them, they complain that the methods used weren't fair."
"The Council recognizes that the hegemony's actions were questionable," Vashtek replied carefully.
However, they raise legitimate concerns about technological balance in galactic affairs.
If one civilization possesses capabilities that make all others defenseless, then that civilization has a responsibility to use those capabilities wisely, Chen finished. High Coordinator, the Terran Federation has no interest in conquest or domination. Our only goal is to ensure that peaceful civilizations can exist without fear of aggressive expansion by powers like the hegemony.
But, how can the galaxy trust that your intentions will remain peaceful? Asked Representative THYSS of the Scientific Coalition.
History shows us that military superiority often leads to imperial ambitions.
Admiral Zexai watched Chen consider this question for a long moment.
When she responded, her voice carried a weight of absolute conviction.
Representative THYSS, humanity learned long ago that true strength comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down.
We've fought wars against tyranny for thousands of years, not to conquer, but to preserve the freedom of all thinking beings to choose their own destiny.
Fine words, said another representative, but words are easy to speak. How do we know the Terran Federation won't become the next hegemony?
Chen's expression shifted to something that made even Admiral Zexai uncomfortable.
For just a moment, the friendly human diplomat was replaced by something ancient and utterly implacable. Because, she said quietly, if humanity ever became what the hegemony is, there would be other humans willing to fight us to the death to stop it. That's what we are. That's what we've always been.
We don't conquer because someone has to watch the watchers, and we've appointed ourselves to that role.
The council chamber fell silent as representatives processed this statement. Finally, Vashtek spoke again. Admiral Chen, the council would like to propose a formal meeting to discuss the Terran Federation's role in galactic affairs. Would your government be willing to participate?
I'll relay the invitation to my superiors, Chen replied.
Though I should warn you that any formal arrangement will need to respect Federation sovereignty.
We don't submit to external authority, but we're always willing to cooperate with civilizations that share our values.
What exactly are those values? Asked Representative Quill.
Simple ones, Chen said with a return of her earlier smile. Every sapient being has the right to freedom, security, and self-determination. Every civilization has the right to develop according to its own culture and beliefs, as long as those beliefs don't involve oppressing others. And every person has the right to live without fear of those who would use superior power to dominate the weak.
And you're willing to enforce these values militarily?
Vashtek asked. When necessary, Chen confirmed without hesitation. The Federation prefers diplomatic solutions, but we will not stand by and watch innocent people suffer when we have the power to help them. As the conversation continued, Admiral Zexai found himself reflecting on the remarkable turn his civilization's fortunes had taken. 3 weeks ago, they had been facing extinction. Now, they were witnessing the emergence of a new power in galactic affairs that might fundamentally change the balance of power that had existed for millennia. But what impressed him most about the humans wasn't their devastating military technology or their apparent immunity to conventional weapons. It was the restraint they had shown. They could have easily conquered the hegemony fleet, enslaved its crews, and claimed the entire system as their own. Instead, they had focused on minimizing casualties and ensuring that peaceful reconstruction could begin immediately.
Admiral Chen, Zexai interjected during a lull in the questioning, if I may ask a personal question? Of course, Admiral. During the battle, your forces could have easily destroyed the hegemony fleet entirely. Why did you choose to disable rather than destroy? Chen's expression became thoughtful. Admiral, the Federation believes that every life has value, even the lives of our enemies. The hegemony soldiers were following orders from their leaders. Killing them wouldn't have accomplished anything except creating more suffering in the galaxy.
But surely some of them will return to fight again, pointed out Representative THYSS.
Possibly, Chen acknowledged.
But some of them might also go home and tell their people what they witnessed here. Maybe a few will decide that there's a better way to exist in the galaxy than through conquest and domination.
Change has to start somewhere.
As the transmission with the Galactic Council continued, more and more representatives began asking questions about human technology, culture, and intentions.
Chen answered what she could while maintaining diplomatic discretion about sensitive topics.
What became increasingly clear was that the Terran Federation represented something entirely new in galactic affairs, a civilization with overwhelming military superiority that genuinely seemed to have no interest in using that superiority for conquest or personal gain. For species that had grown accustomed to the cycle of rising and falling empires, each more oppressive than the last, the concept was almost incomprehensible. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of questions, Bashtek called for a conclusion to the session. Admiral Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Coordination Council, I formally invite the Terran Federation to establish diplomatic relations with the galactic community. We hope this marks the beginning of a new era of cooperation and peace. I'll pass along your invitation, High Coordinator, Chen replied. I'm sure my government will be very interested in opening formal discussions. As the transmission ended, Admiral Zexai turned to Chen with undisguised curiosity. Admiral, may I ask what happens now? Will the Federation maintain a presence in our system? For as long as you want us here, Chen replied simply. The hegemony won't try anything while Federation ships are patrolling your space, and our engineers are happy to continue helping with reconstruction efforts. Beyond that, it's your choice. Zexai realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, the emergence of a truly benevolent hegemony. The humans had the power to impose their will on anyone they chose, but instead they were offering protection and assistance while respecting the sovereignty of those they helped. It was a concept so revolutionary that it would take the galaxy years to fully understand its implications. 6 months after the Battle of Veltar, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The defeat of the hegemony had sent shockwaves through every civilized system, and the emergence of the Terran Federation as a major galactic power had fundamentally altered the balance that had existed for millennia. Admiral Sarachen stood on the observation deck of the Federation flagship Harmony, watching the bustling activity around the newly constructed Veltar diplomatic station. Representatives from over 200 different civilizations had gathered for what historians would later call the Galactic Cooperation Summit, the largest diplomatic gathering in recorded history. Admiral, called her aide, Commander Rodriguez, Ambassador Williams is requesting your presence in Conference Room 7. The hegemony delegation has arrived. Chen nodded, straightening her dress uniform. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of diplomatic activity as the Federation worked to establish its place in galactic society. What had started as a simple rescue mission had evolved into something much more significant. How are our guests settling in? She asked as they walked through the station's corridors. Better than expected, Rodriguez replied. The Kitharan hospitality staff has been excellent, and most delegations seem genuinely excited about the possibility of formal cooperation. Though there have been some interesting reactions to our technology demonstrations. Chen smiled. The Federation's diplomatic corps had decided on a policy of selective transparency, demonstrating enough of their capabilities to discourage potential aggressors while maintaining operational security. The reactions had ranged from awe to terror to desperate attempts at technological espionage. They entered Conference Room 7 to find Ambassador Williams, the Federation's chief diplomat, seated across from an unexpected sight. Instead of the cybernetic war machine she had faced months earlier, Warprime Nexus 7 had been replaced by a being that appeared to be largely organic. His metal implants were minimal, and his demeanor was completely different from the arrogant conqueror she remembered. Admiral Chen, Ambassador Williams said, rising from his seat, I'd like you to meet Subprime Corax 9, who is now representing the hegemony in diplomatic matters. The being that had once served as Nexus 7 science officer stood and performed what Chen recognized as a formal greeting gesture from several species in the hegemony's former territory. Admiral Chen, Corax 9 said in heavily accented Federation standard, I bring greetings from the Hegemony Council and a formal proposal for your consideration. I'm listening, Chen replied, taking his seat across from the former hegemony officer. The events at Veltar have transformed our society, Corax 9 began carefully. The defeat of our forces, combined with your demonstration of restraint and mercy, has caused many of our people to question the path we have followed for centuries. Chen exchanged glances with Ambassador Williams. Federation intelligence had been monitoring hegemony space for months, tracking what appeared to be a massive internal revolution as their society struggled to adapt to their first military defeat. What kind of transformation? Williams asked diplomatically. Warprime Nexus 7 has been relieved of command, Corax 9 continued. The Hegemony Council has decided that our previous policies of expansion and conquest are no longer sustainable in a galaxy that contains civilizations like yours. We are requesting guidance. The silence that followed was profound. Chen realized that she was witnessing something unprecedented, a galactic superpower voluntarily abandoning its imperial ambitions and asking its former enemies for help. Guidance with what, specifically? Chen asked. Everything, Corax-9 replied with what appeared to be genuine humility. Our entire society has been built around military conquest for over 1,000 years.
We don't know how to exist peacefully. We don't understand cooperation. We have no experience with diplomacy that doesn't involve threats or ultimatums.
What you're describing would require fundamental changes to your entire civilization, Ambassador Williams pointed out.
Are your people prepared for that?
Some are, Corax-9 acknowledged. Others resist the changes and have formed separatist factions in the outer territories. But, after seeing what the Federation accomplished in a single battle, many of our leaders recognize that the old ways will only lead to our destruction.
Chen leaned forward, studying the former hegemony officer carefully. What exactly are you proposing? A formal alliance, Corax-9 said.
The hegemony possesses extensive territorial holdings, advanced manufacturing capabilities, and detailed knowledge of threats in unexplored regions of the galaxy. In exchange for Federation protection and guidance in establishing peaceful governance, we could offer substantial resources and strategic cooperation.
You're asking us to help you transform from a militant empire into a peaceful civilization?
Chen asked, wanting to make sure she understood correctly.
Yes, Corax-9 confirmed.
Though we understand if the Federation considers our proposal too risky or our people too dangerous to trust.
Before Chen could respond, Commander Rodriguez appeared in the doorway.
Admiral, forgive the interruption, but we're receiving emergency transmissions from multiple systems.
Something's happening in the outer rim. What kind of something?
Chen asked, immediately shifting into military mode. Unknown contacts, Admiral. Large formations of ships using technology that doesn't match any known civilization. They've already overrun 3 systems, and the energy signatures suggest they're not from this galaxy.
Chen felt a chill run down her spine.
An extragalactic invasion was one of the scenarios that Federation strategic planners had considered, but hoped would never materialize. Corax-9, she said, turning back to the hegemony representative, you mentioned threats in unexplored regions.
Do you know anything about this?
The former subprime's expression grew grave. Admiral, approximately 2 standard years ago, our long-range scout ships detected anomalous readings from beyond the galactic rim. The energy signatures were unlike anything in our databases, but our leadership dismissed the reports as sensor malfunctions.
What kind of anomalous readings? Ambassador Williams asked urgently.
Massive energy expenditures consistent with advanced propulsion systems, but operating on principles we couldn't understand. If I had to guess, I would say that someone has been watching our galaxy for some time, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Chen's tactical mind was already racing through implications.
If an extragalactic force had been observing the galaxy, they would have witnessed the Federation's demonstration of superior technology.
An invasion force would likely be prepared to counter conventional galactic military capabilities, but they might not understand what they were really facing. Commander Rodriguez, contact Admiral Park at Fleet Command.
Tell him to implement Defense Protocol 7 immediately.
I want every available ship in defensive positions around major population centers. Yes, Admiral, Rodriguez replied, and disappeared to carry out his orders. Corax-9, Chen continued, if the hegemony is serious about this alliance proposal, now would be an excellent time to demonstrate your commitment to cooperation. We need every ship and every piece of intelligence you can provide. You have them, Corax-9 replied without hesitation. I'll contact the Council immediately and authorize full military cooperation with Federation forces. Over the next several hours, the Veltar diplomatic station transformed into an impromptu military command center. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations found themselves working together to coordinate the largest joint military operation in galactic history.
Admiral Zexhai, now serving as the Kitharan liaison to the Federation fleet, watched in amazement as human officers coordinated with former enemies and recent allies alike.
The efficiency was staggering. Within 6 hours, a combined fleet of over 3,000 ships from dozens of different civilizations had been assembled and deployed to intercept the unknown invaders.
Admiral Chen, he said during a brief lull in the planning, how is it possible to coordinate so many different military forces so quickly?
Chen smiled, though her expression remained focused on the tactical displays. Admiral, the Federation has been preparing for scenarios like this since we first reached the stars.
We learned long ago that no single civilization, no matter how advanced, can survive every threat the universe might present. Sometimes you need friends. But these civilizations were enemies just months ago, Zexai pointed out. The hegemony was conquering their worlds. Why are they willing to fight alongside them now? Because right now, the only thing that matters is protecting innocent people, Chen replied. Old grudges become irrelevant when everyone's survival is at stake. As reports continued to come in from the Outer Rim, the scale of the invasion became clear. The attackers weren't just another imperial power seeking conquest, they were something else entirely. Their ships seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making them difficult to target with conventional weapons. Their technology appeared to be based on manipulating fundamental forces in ways that even Federation scientists were struggling to understand. But, perhaps most disturbing were the reports from the few survivors who had escaped the initial attacks. The invaders weren't interested in conquest or resources. They were systematically destroying every trace of civilization they encountered, leaving behind only empty, sterilized worlds. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez reported grimly, "We've lost contact with the 7th Fleet." Their last transmission indicated they were engaging unknown forces near the Meridian system. Chen studied the tactical display, watching red indicators spread across the galactic map like a plague. Whatever they were facing, it was unlike any threat the galaxy had ever encountered. "Status of the combined fleet?" she asked. "All units report ready for engagement, Admiral." The hegemony has committed their entire remaining military force to the operation. Even some of the separatist factions have agreed to temporary cooperation. Chen nodded, then activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice was broadcast to over 3,000 ships crewed by representatives of dozens of different species. "All units, this is Admiral Chen. We are facing an enemy that threatens not just our individual civilizations, but all life in our galaxy. Today, we stand together not as former enemies or reluctant allies, but as guardians of everything we hold dear." She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet visible through the viewport. The Federation has often said that every sapient being has the right to freedom and self-determination. Today, we fight to ensure that those rights continue to exist. All units, advance to contact. Let's show these invaders what happens when the galaxy stands united. As the massive combined fleet jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Chen realized that the emergency transmission the Kitharans had sent months earlier had done more than save a single civilization. It had introduced humanity to a galaxy that desperately needed exactly what the Federation represented, the combination of overwhelming power and the wisdom to use it in defense of others. The real test of that wisdom was about to begin.